Angry Norwegians that is back. Enjoy the show.
You know what the best part about an army of angry Norwegians is?
What is that, Todd?
They work for pickled herring.
Every week. Every week.
I was assuming it'd be a different, we'll get different motivations over time. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. You're listening and watching us live here at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 9th of May, 2021. A very happy, in the U.S., Mother's Day to all the mums out there that are celebrating today. And hopefully you take a moment out there to celebrate your mum. So here's to all of you. Today, we are going to be looking at a bit of discussion about what happens when, or how do I phrase it? Groups that often lie together and agree together, can they sometimes disagree? And what does that turn into?
That might be the most banal way of describing what we're talking about that I've ever heard of. I use that as a compliment because that is impressive. That is impressive. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I interrupted, but I interrupted because I wanted to compliment you on the way that you're describing what we're going to talk about.
Every once in a while, my brain transitions on its own into how would I translate this?
Yeah. Imagine Spain, 1512.
So, but let's see. Did I have anything I need to get off before we get started on that? I did want to share a little bit that thank you to those who wished me a happy birthday over this break. And the couple of games I received, always appreciative, along with the well wishes. And just throwing out that even though I was remote, and so sorry for how I sounded last week on the earbuds kind of thing, but credit to my brother's internet for letting us keep going through it. So credit to that, as well as to get my gaming fix over the break. I just wanted to throw out that I actually found myself playing more than a little bit because I didn't have my computer on me, so forced to phone gaming, of League of Legends Wild Rift, where I actually put in quite a few games on that, and am continue to be impressed with that. I could just pick it up and be like, this actually runs really well on the phone. Although, man, does it tear down some battery. Running at full 60 frames per second, and when you're full gaming for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes in a session, and man, does that battery and the phone warm up, and it's just like, whoo, like this is impressive, but I was hunting for the plug as quick as I could. So,
oh, dude, I've been playing so much Wild Rift. It's my go-to when I'm not sure what to do with my time, or I've had half an hour to kill somewhere. I'll just lie down in bed, I'll put on my audiobook, and I'll play a quick ranked game of Wild Rift.
I can't believe you're not playing Raid Shadow Legends, honestly.
I'm so happy that I've never actually played or looked at it.
You're not playing Hearthstone Battlegrounds, honestly. By the way, there's a tradition on this show for people celebrating a birthday. and
others.
The hosts of the show get to participate in the tradition the same as anybody else. So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you. There you go.
Thank you very much, Todd.
Close tag Maryland.
Right? So yes, I have leveled up another day. I also was able to figure out that I was able to, on Thursday of last week, continue to play D&D with my group via the phone. It's amazing how strong these dang computers are, because we connect via Discord. I was able to log into Roll20 on the Safari browser, as well as see my character sheet, and it worked to be able to hit the button and roll in game using the virtual dice. A little bit of challenge because I couldn't navigate myself around the map because Roll20 doesn't have a for mobile UI. And so like the little pop-up windows take up the majority of the screen, and there's a little sliver of the map in the middle. And I was having to like rotate it and do things like that. And there's a little bit of a challenge that when you, at least on my iPhone, when I multitask and move between like the Safari page to view and the Discord to see everybody, that my video on the Discord blanks out whenever I'm in the other apps. And so it's like, I'm there, I'm not. I'm there, I'm not. But I was able to play sitting on a chair looking over the lagoon with the sun setting as we were playing D&D. So that was kind of nice too. So gaming via mobile devices can be done. But,
Absolutely. Especially with apps such as NVIDIA Now and such as well, not just using Wild Rift or even D20.
yeah, not the native stuff, but using like the extra, the tools that allow you to reach through.
Yeah, I've not used it yet. Like, I've been using NVIDIA Now for the past 2 months on my Mac because it's super useful for gaming. Because Macs can't freaking game, right? And if your Mac can game, then you've dropped like 20 grand on it. So what are you doing, right? Or you're playing Factorio. Like you can play Factorio fine on it, right? You can play old school RuneScape on it. You can play World of Warcraft on it, but you can't play anything that requires anything more than a graphic chip. So either you drop 20 grand on a new Mac with graphics processing abilities, or you use something like NVIDIA Now, which is actually really reasonable. It's $9 a month I'm paying, and you play games that you already own. Not all of them, sadly. Honestly, the library is a bit lackluster. I wish there was more in there, but it's got some of the stuff that I really do care about, and some of the games that I enjoy, including League of Legends, Satisfactory, RimWorld, The Witcher 3, Path of Exile, Ark Survival Evolved, Rocket League, Fortnite, and a bunch of other stuff in there. But it is missing a lot of stuff at the same time. And I keep Googling, like, when is there going to be more stuff available? And I'm not getting any answers, which is a little sad. Because I really want to go play Dragon Age right now. I've been urging to play Dragon Age for like a month and a half for some reason. And I just can't. There's no way for me to go play Dragon Age other than buying it on PlayStation again, even though I already own it. Don't ask. Long story.
Yep.
Europe to US has its disadvantages.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're all connected, yet for some stupid reason, regionality, because they get to nail you twice for.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe regionality
honestly,
needs to go away.
Say what you will about Activision Blizzard. I did not. It cost me. It cost me the price of the subscription to start playing WoW Classic in a region that I don't own a copy of the original game. But I used to own 2 copies of WoW Vanilla, right?
Yep.
And bought expansion packs for both for a while, but then stopped because I was the only one playing. So I had two copies in the US and was able to just start up, download the classic client and play, and did not need to buy like a copy of Shadowlands or whatever in order to get my hands on it, or buy vanilla again in order to start to play it. So you credit where it's due to ActiBliz. I can't believe I'm saying that, but credit where it's due.
And at the same time, we can maybe briefly discuss the news about how much it costs for a character clone?
Oh, it's like $60, right?
Yep.
Wait, what?
Yep.
Well,
so copy paste costs you $60. Even though they show it in game, by the way, they show the character copy as a clone, so you see you see it. They bother to implement the graphics to show you where your character would be. And like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have that clone there?
Yeah.
But they won't actually. But then it costs $60 to sound crazy to actually do it.
Now,
So
credit due
to be fair, you have the choice, right? At some point, everybody's going to have to choose to play Vanilla Classic, or to make the transition to TBC.
But why not just continue doing what they're doing and maintain all those nice subscriptions that are bringing them a crap ton of money per month because of Classic, and just continue that by releasing TPC Classic, charging nothing, and letting a free clone to go across, and you get to play it. That would be
because there are some people who will pay the price to have characters on both. There are some people who will do it. I won't do it. I'm not going to pay for the character boost either. which is also a thing that you can buy, right? The boost up to 58, and I think that costs 30 or 40 bucks for a 58 character boost. I'm not doing no, and so you're probably going to disagree with me, Ken, but this is a stupid / affluence tax, right? Like if you're dumb, if you're affluent enough to afford the 40 or 60 bucks to do it, then do it.
I wouldn't say it's dumb. I don't think it's dumb. I think it is affluence or it's a lack of time. Like if you're somebody who really just wants to play with your buddies online and that's what everybody's playing, and you work an intense job that's like 50 hours a week or whatever, it's worth the money, right? It is. It's just
I know. Yeah, I know somebody who's in that boat. So peace. I was gonna spin off into a little thing. Thanks for stopping me. Because no, because you're right. There are a handful of people out there that don't have necessarily the time, but yet want to play with their friends. And we have somebody that's in that exact. Situation, and everybody was expecting at least a month with pre-patch for TBC, and we're gonna get 2 weeks with pre-patch, right? So. Like I was expecting, because I don't know if you know this, but World of Warcraft: The Burning Crusade Classic is launching on June 1st. And so we're doing this thing where we're meeting twice a week and we're running all the classic dungeons, like roll 1 to 60, right? And it's been awesome and it's a lot of fun. And we're starting to get into the instances that are more fun because we're more powerful than we were. 10 levels ago, and now we can get into more complicated encounters, right? So it's starting to get really fun. But yeah, we're like, I was expecting pre-patch to hit maybe at the end of the month, and then a month of pre-patch, and then maybe July 1st or July 15th as a launch date for Burning Crusade, but nope, they're dumping pre-patch supposedly on May 18th, and TBC Classic's going to launch on June 1st. So yeah, we're in this situation where the 5 of us are going to be in our 40s when TBC hits, right? And it's just like, what do you do in that situation? Like, do you take the gloves off of everybody who's got the time to go, and then the 1 or 2 people who don't have that time have to cough up to catch up? Like, I've already got a 62. It would cost me nothing to just respec the character that's right now set up to DPS as a healer and just do all the end game instances that way. So like, I'm set because I'm obsessive. But the others in our group not necessarily so. So, yep. I mock. But your point is well made, Ken. That there are some people out there that are just going to want to do the Hellfire stuff with their friends and wouldn't necessarily be able to because it takes time to do all this leveling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I'm curious, anybody in the chat who's playing WoW Classic, what are your experiences? I've never really been. I don't really feel the appeal because I get why. For me, WoW is a very collector's thing. I care about mounts and I care about achievements and stuff, and I don't get that kick from Classic, I guess.
No, you would not get that kick from Classic. That is absolutely true. Well, I'm playing. Obviously, it's been great. I'm having a blast. It's still hitting all the nostalgia feels, and it's fun playing. It's fun playing through that content again with the benefit of 15 years of experience.
Oh, that's interesting.
Not necessarily experience playing World of Warcraft or even experience playing MMOs, right? It's with the experience of playing video games for 15 years.
Do you think you've learned and kind of have improved because of that? That's a curious thought.
Yeah, I think I understand. I think I understand systems better. right? And maybe if you go back to 2005, I don't think I ever really thought about a game in terms of mechanics and that it's all just a spreadsheet, right? I took a much more this is entertainment, this is replacing a TV show or a feature film.
Yeah.
So like all of the magic that was happening under the hood was in fact magic. Well,
I missed that.
I know a hell of a lot more now than I did then. I know none of it's magic, that it's all math, and I know the math, right? So it was like the difference between trying to play poker the first time and then playing poker after reading a couple of low limit Texas Hold'em books, where all of the math is explained to you, and if you want to keep up with it, that's the math that you have to know, right? So once I knew what the math was, it was just this whole different world. Like I know what I'm supposed to bet at what time if I've got 4 to a flush with 2 cards left to be played, right? I know exactly what the odds are. No big deal, right?
Yep.
Whereas before I was just splashing around.
Yeah.
Right? And since, I don't play poker all that often, so since then I've forgotten the math, and it's much more of I'm going to take this $100 and just splash around a little bit and no big deal. Right. But there was a period of time where I could literally walk into a casino and go, okay, I'm going to go make some money now.
So I have a fantastic tool that I'd like to share. Again, sorry we haven't even started the topic today, guys. I do apologize. We've been tangenting like mad here, as we always do. It's ShowX after all. But I wanted to share this fantastic tool that I've now used for 3 different poker nights with 2 different groups of people, and it's worked very well each time. I'll find the URL and I'll drop it in chat. It's called Donk House, and basically what it is a website that's completely free to use. You don't require a Facebook connection. Actually, I'm not going to put the link in the chat because it's a link to poker, and I think it might get me banned, so I'm not going to do that. But it's donkhouse.com. And it's completely free. You don't put any money in it. There's no money whatsoever involved. It's literally just a service for playing cards, right? It's a little complex to set up. It's not particularly intuitive at first, but once you get the game going, it's a really pretty looking website that lets you set a bunch of like homemade rules and stuff, and or options, time limits, all this stuff, so you can really customize it to whatever you want. Ins, buy-ins throughout the game, all that sort of stuff, as well as different variants of the game. So you can do Texas Hold'em, 5-card stud, whatever you want. It's fantastic for the pandemic era and for the globalized era. So if you want to play poker, like say we want to play poker right now, we could do it live on air right now, no problem. Super easy to set up. So what I did with my buddies is we made it to the PayPal pool. So we all put like £5 in or whatever onto a PayPal pool. Then whoever won got the whole pool. And it's that easy, and there's no money involved on the website, which makes me feel safer because I don't trust random websites to hold my money, but I do trust PayPal. So if everybody's looking for a way to play poker with their friends and family back home or whatever, or catching up with old buddies and having a poker night without, having to wear masks and sitting 10 feet apart from everybody, you can do that with donkhouse.com. I recommend it thoroughly.
Along with that, I will say that if you have a VR headset, you can do the free VR Poker Stars, which actually plays really great.
Cool.
Because you're in the game doing the whole thing, and they have a bunch of emotes and stuff. But
Neat.
I don't play much poker. All right. Using this, though, as we've discussed this thing, it's time to transition. Because we're going to talk about today's topic. So I would love if Todd, you could lead us off into this one to kind of set the stage for the conversation.
Sure.
I know that we had a video that linked in for how we started things that I will put in the chat as one example of a conversation to be had. This one being the woke video.
I really don't want to get bogged down with that. So I want to start with all the usual caveats, right? No one deserves death threats, right? No one deserves to be harassed off the internet, right? That's so. With those caveats in mind, the reason why I even know about this is because the Mistress of Giggles is a big fan of Lindsay Ellis.
Okay.
And Lindsay Ellis published a 1 hour and 40 minute, what was supposed to be an apology. Well, was supposed to be an explanatory video of the online activist mob coming for her, and the set of evidence they had that she was in fact not an ally, whatever the hell that means, and so explaining, trying to give the context for all the things that she did, all the things that she did and the timeline that she did them, and trying to provide context to the people who said that she deserved to not be on the internet anymore. And then she subsequently deleted her Twitter. I have heard from sources that it is back, but I do not know that. I have not confirmed that, so we'll leave that as speculation.
That's an easy fact check. Yep, she's got it still. She's back on.
Okay. So she was gone for some number of days, but less than 2 weeks. And then I started looking into this more and more, and there was another YouTube channel called ContraPoints, and ContraPoints apparently had something similar happen to her, although it's a little bit unclear as to what event actually triggered it. It could be as much as a year ago. Like, I didn't know about this until the thing with Lindsay went down. But anyway, so I am not in favor of and I don't know what else to call them, so I'm going to call them this, even though it's going to mark us in a certain way that we are not. But the Church of Woke. I am not in favor of the Church of Woke turning on somebody and deciding Spanish Inquisition style that they are not pure enough and then bullying them off the internet.
It's a very interesting discussion, right? Because it's this idea of cancel culture which we've talked about in the past, right? It's this sort of where do you draw the line? And everybody draws the line somewhere, right? Like, and that, it's not. I don't think there's anybody in this world who would say that they wouldn't. It's like saying, would you be friends with anybody? I don't think anybody would be friends with any single person on Earth. That's like saying I'd be best friends with Hitler, right? You got to draw the line somewhere. It's just some people will be like, oh, I don't like the way you, I don't know, say the word tomato instead of tomato, and they'll draw the line there, and that's ridiculous, obviously, right? And it's a silly example, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's the same. It's the same with political views. It's the same with religious views. It's the same with the views on gender, transgenderism. Philosophy, pretty much anything that is an idea, an abstract idea, and there's levels of how reasonable that is, and when it comes to things like political activism, it's a very difficult subject, right? And I think you see a lot about this in the left, but you also see it in the right as well. I mean, you'll see people on the right who are more economically right-wing, right? But then maybe they don't have the same views on abortion, or they don't have the same views on transgenderism, or who can join the military, or having a draft for women, all that sort of stuff, right? And so you do see a little bit in the right, but it is fascinating to me, and it's something that I've noticed a lot, which is it does seem to be that the left segment much more frequently, right? They have these little groups so much more frequently, and it's one of the biggest strengths the right has over the left, which is that when they say this is the person we're going to vote for, as I think we all know who we're thinking of in the U.S. in the past couple of elections, right? They do it, right? They say, okay, that's our guy, even if they don't 100% agree, they do it, and. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that can be argued over. I think in the first past the post system, there's clear downsides and upsides to that.
But what it is, Ken, is effective, right?
Yeah.
Like if your goal is winning national elections, but you can't dominate any major population center, like you have to coalesce.
Yeah.
And
you're absolutely right.
And everybody needs to coalesce. Like, if there's any dissension at all at any point along the line, you're done. You lose.
Yep.
Full stop, period, end. right?
Yeah,
And
we don't let these people in because they voted for I don't know, they're kind of libertarian instead of pure Republican, right?
right,
We don't like that anymore. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so we don't like the sort of center. We don't like the center right populists. We want just a baseline. We want a baseline corporatist conservative, right? Well, if you take that stance, just to go back, we saw what Mitt Romney was as a presidential candidate. He lost, right? So again, if your goal is winning national elections in America, then and you're I'm going to call them the minority party. It's not really correct. Maybe the opposition party or the Republicans. I guess I can just say that, right?
Yeah.
And you're the Republicans. Like you have to. There's no choice. Whereas to your point, Ken, like the you know Tulsi Gabbard, after the first Democratic primary debate, was destroyed on both CNN and MSNBC. Right? She got called an Assad apologist and a Russian asset. Right? Like, it's just like, what are you guys doing? Why would you do that? Why would you not want the strongest set of candidates possible to be
Well,
in your debate format? Like it's ridiculous that there are 18 candidates at the start of this thing to begin with, right? That's a big part of the problem. And neither political party has learned this lesson yet.
I agree and disagree. I mean, okay, I work in optimization. A large part of what I do is have a number of solutions that coalesce into being better solutions, often through genetical breeding and such, right? Be that through computer programs or actual biology. That's all to do with my work. And that finding of solutions is very important to have a varied base at the start. If you always start in the same state, you'll always end up in not necessarily the same state, but you won't be able to explore very far. So it's good to have a nice search base, right? It's good to have a variety of solutions to choose from.
Okay.
The difficulty is that is the type of voting system that we have, right? It's very elitist. So first past the post has that inherent, right? So when we have a bunch of candidates, it's not about who's the best, it's about who's the safest, right? It's the one that can garner the most votes, and can be a middle ground for as many people as possible. And we see that with Biden, right? We see Bernie was somebody who people like myself were more interested in, and I'm careful not to talk too much about my own personal politics here, but people like Bernie who are further left wing. I'm not even going to say he's left wing because I don't really consider him left wing. Funnily enough.
Yes, right. These things are relative, right? On the American political spectrum, he's left wing. On the European political spectrum, he's center right.
Yeah, he's still very much a capitalist, right?
Yeah,
so he's not particularly left.
Right.
But but he's seen as very left in the US, and because he's kind of divisive that way, because even a lot of Democrats were saying, oh, he's a bit too left for me, they had to go with somebody a lot safer, like Bernie, Biden, who could bring in some of the right-wingers as well, who weren't fond of Trump, right? And that's why they went with the safe bet. As much as it hurts so many people, there's so many subreddits dedicated to Democrats saying, this is terrible. Like, we were still seeing these child prison camps for immigrants and stuff. That's still a huge problem that's not being fixed because, if it was Bernie in there, Bernie would have went in there and signed something on the first day and just solved that problem. But Biden is still pretty right wing, right? He's still okay with all that stuff. And that's
I talked about this last week, Ken, and I am really becoming more and more solidified in this view, especially when I saw the polling numbers from France. And we'll get to that at some point tonight. But I really think that Biden was the Davos G20 or G8, the sort of the people behind the people who run everything, like the money men and women, looking at a global populist revolt and saying, we gotta pump the brakes on this right now, or we're gonna lose it all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of it along the lines of Kaiser Wilhelm and Tsar Nicholas II corresponding with each other, trying to prevent World War I. Because they both knew if World War I happens, it's the end of monarchy in Europe.
Okay.
Right? And think about it. The Austria-Hungary Empire fell. The Ottoman Empire fell. The Russian Empire fell. The German Empire fell. Right? In World War I.
Yep.
By the end of it. Like the end of it was basically the end of European monarchy. Like you had the Scandinavian countries in England and Spain. And a couple of others, like Greece or something like that. Anyway, and I really think that everybody looked at Poland and Hungary and Italy and France and Brexit and Sweden and Germany and the 2016 presidential election in America and went, "Oh my God, we have to stop this because it's going to be the end of globalist neoliberalism if we don't." And we, for good or ill, how you feel about it is somewhat irrelevant. Like they just decided we have to stop it right here and right now. And what's really interesting about this is, it is somewhat unthinkable to me that somebody like Marine Le Pen could be in a dead heat with Macron for the elections in France, and yet she's polling within the margin of error. And for those of you that don't know who Marine Le Pen is, she the Le Pen family are the conservative, borderline fascist political party in France.
They're very much the Trumps of France. That's pretty much what they are.
Yeah, I mean I guess that's a reasonable comparison, right? That's the whole reason why Draghi got installed in Italy. Right? Is again another one of those, we got to pump the brakes on this because of Italy. If a center-right populist government gets elected again in Italy and they are able to form a government, they're gonna do a referendum to leave the European Union.
Yeah.
Right?
That's absolutely
one of the hallmarks of the center-right populist parties in Europe is EU skepticism. Right, that's just one of the hallmarks. Now, one of the things that's interesting about, and I'm reading up on all this stuff because I find it fascinating, and we're going to get back to the topic here in just a minute, so bear with us. But one of the things that I think is really interesting about Le Pen's run for French president this time is that she's distanced herself from the idea of a French referendum on leaving the EU, and she's much more advocating a reform of the European Union, which I think, honestly is going to make her much more palatable to what I'll call the radical center. The economic protectionist, immigration restrictionist, but yet likes the social safety net where it is types. That take sort of a conservative view on foreign policy issues, but a leftist view on internal policy issues, right?
Sure, yeah. I think that's a good distinction to make because people often conflate left and right with being everything, when truly there's economical left, there's foreign policy left.
There's versions of, be it progressive, conservative, right, left, whatever, across every issue, and in the majority of things, most people have beliefs that are specific to each issue at hand. That when you discuss about specific issues, you may find yourself somewhere else on the scale than just the one answer of one direction or the other.
Right.
And that gets lost in a lot of conversation when it comes to politics.
Right. And the reality is, if you take the summation of all of a person's political or policy views, right, that summation ends up somewhere in the middle.
Usually, yeah, usually
I
it
would-
does. There's
I
a
would
few
argue. I mean,
exceptions, but
Sure, obviously there.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, I've run into the people that surprised me. Where I was like, "Oh, you really, really do believe all of that, huh?"
Doomsday bunker people.
There are extremes, right? But the majority, I agree. You almost bell curve inside the thing that the vast majority of people, I think you would find somewhere middle ground when you sum up, like you said, all their political views.
Right.
So,
But
when
that's
you're talking,
it's funny. Oh, sorry, Wayne. It's funny that we talk about this because it takes is one ideologically non-compliant policy view to get the mob to turn on you.
well, and that's, I think, the important thing to roll it back into this conversation about what it means about like this idea of the mob and what we kind of titled the show with, because like the example of the video we showed was a disagreement between essentially two key players, and this one coming around gaming, game journalism, game discussion, things like that, which initially got this in our sphere of kind of what we were discussing. And it was a conversation or a disagreement kind of thing between was it two female game journalist commentary Twitch personalities such Zombie Killers and
Yep.
Was it this Canada girl or it was something Canada girl?
Yeah, something like that. Yep.
But essentially, it was a thing that was showcasing, if you will, kind of this idea about a grouping of people, and in general terms, their leans, their thoughts, their beliefs about certain subjects. That you generally grouping groups, people into those things. And the example in this case was focused on what could be defined as niche groups within the gaming sphere of female, person of color, gamers as such as being distinct groups and such, and how often, regardless of the group, and this is where it extends to the bigger conversation, people tend to get lumped together because they share some ideals. And in doing so, there seems to be a certain expectation that anyone in a defined group, or even that it was discussed in some of these things, circles of influence or circles of group, when they cross in some way so that there's similarities in some of the things they tend to focus on as their ideals, there's this mentality, it seems, that anyone associated with those ideals should share basically the exact same viewpoints, that they should be like lock, stock, in line with each other for the things they support and how they feel about it.
Yep.
And that's something that then when the reality comes to play, kind of what we've been discussing about the political side, that not everyone who maybe champions one thing necessarily agrees with everything that is determined to be or is thought to be the, all the ideals they should be.
It's so easy to get on the wrong side of the mob, right? As evidenced by Lindsay Ellis's canceling.
It just takes a furor, right? Like it takes somebody being mad and spouting about it, and somebody else feeling inspired. Anger.
No, and I'll tell you what, like it's remarkable the amount of evidence that happened in the middle of this Twitter storm, right? It was just like, if Lindsay Ellis is guilty of anything, she's guilty of a bad take, right? That's it.
Well, so I'm curious exactly? Because I've been trying to catch up on it.
She made a tweet talking about Raya and the Last Dragon.
Yeah, basically the tweet that I found, to quote, is from Lindsay Ellis saying, also watched Raya and the Last Dragon, and I think we need to come up with a name for this genre that is basically Avatar The Last Airbender reduxes. It's like half of all YA young adult fantasy published in the last few years anyway.
Yep.
Right. So what's exactly problematic about this?
So I will admit I struggled to find it on the surface, and have been in this time frame looking over and trying to read a few things, and I've seen what others can say. I want to quote the next tweet first, a response that Lindsay did into as the controversy was hitting around her. The next tweet she said that gives some level, I guess, additional is her quote is, "I can see where if you squint, I was implying all Asian-inspired properties are the same, especially if you were already
not what I
privy
got from that
to
whatsoever.
those conversations where I had not seen them. But the basic framework of The Last Airbender, TLA, is becoming popular in fantasy fiction outside of Asian-inspired stuff." So that was her next tweet that I saw in line with this. That is a direct from her versus the discussing around it.
You're shaking your head, Ken, but you're really gonna shake your head because this is how little you have to do to get on the wrong side of the Church of Woke. Okay,
because somebody else poorly interpreted what you said and made an assumption about your political views without any...
Avatar: The Last Airbender was made by white dudes. Raya and the Last Dragon was made largely by East and South Asians and a couple of white dudes because it's Disney, right?
Okay, so that does feel like there's a little bit of ignorance there on her part, I guess. That with that explanation of who made it, but at the same time, it doesn't change the fact that even if it was who it was made by, if it still feels the same regardless of who created it, then her point's still valid.
Don't get me wrong, audience. I don't like most of her content because I don't like postmodernism. Okay, as a school of thought, and if you need to deep dive on that, we certainly can. But I don't like most of what she says. I don't like most of the content that she does. The Mistress of Giggles does. I do not. This is a giant, humongous nothing burger, and she got destroyed for it for nothing. It is nothing. And think about that, right? And
I mean, I don't know why they decided to go for her because, there are so many people that are out there putting out like truly transphobic, truly anti-feminist, truly disgusting, racially prejudiced fueled tweets that are, not deep dive. If we think of it in this light, then maybe it could be considered ignorant kind of tweets, but no, actually racist on the surface using slurs kind of tweets. Go for those people, Twitter mob. Jesus, there's people
I don't know. I don't know if there's something else. I mean, like, there's always the possibility that there was something else on a more personal level, that got Lindsay Ellis on the wrong side of these people, and it's a personal thing, but they drug up stuff from like 2009 to tar and feather her with, right? So she did a comedy skit. She was part of Channel Awesome way back in the day.
Okay.
And she did a comedy sketch that she didn't intend to upload, and because she was late, I guess, with uploads on the according to her Channel Awesome contract or whatever, that some a-hole admin uploaded a video that she didn't want uploaded, and so that was used against her. Like, it's really just people kept screen caps for years to do this.
So looking through it, I mean, it does seem like some of the comments I saw in response to essentially the effect of her getting canceled were a lot of people saying, "About time, I'm so glad she was," things like that. So I assume, based on that assumption, that there is a general dislike of her some people have maintained for some time for whatever reasons. And I looked at real quickly some other tweets from other completely different shows, movies, things like that. It seems like she often provides commentary about her thoughts on movies or experiences of things around them, as though being a critic of some sort.
Channel is about. Yeah, that's what her YouTube channel is about. That's what
she
does.
Some of the language I've seen looks, I would say, it sounds or looks a bit like she is doing the more I can be counter to what the general narrative is about a movie, that's my thing. You know, the people who are going to complain
I'll
about
bring in
something
views.
just because it's popular. I'm just saying, it seems like from some of what I've
Hot
watched.
take sell that there's no indication of all the things that she's done that she doesn't believe the things that she's saying.
Right, but I've seen a lot of channels, and this is just my own take, right, that brand themselves by doing the clickbaity thing, by being the counter popular, right? That's their niche is, oh, that thing everybody loves? Well, here's 10 reasons it's actually crap and you're an idiot for liking it, right? That is a whole genre out on the internet. And looking at a few things, because I saw some comments she made about the movie Soul, which all the responses I've heard have been generally good, and she made a point of saying something that was very like, this point of it makes it very bad kind of thing. So I'm wondering if that's not her take, which I could understand if it is, or at least those kind of comments could get a lot of people who like those IPs, that like those movies, to generally dislike her opinion and thus have a negative view. But I agree, Todd, to what you were saying, that in what a lot of the commentary was, that this specific comment that she apparently got targeted for seems to have been blown, in my opinion, out of perspective and used to attack, right? Now, the challenge is, I don't know if this is so much an example of like what we discussed a little bit earlier about the wrong side of the mob, in the sense of like how it can even get to a point where it turns against itself. It's definitely an example of people who are doing the thing that we don't agree with, which is trying to find reason, rhyme, or way to counsel, as the term is, to disavow someone's ability to create content, to be allowed to succeed, earn a living, and do things like that in society because a group disagrees with them for whatever reason.
And it's you know, the mob is so brilliant in its insidiousness. Like if you think about the mental Lego that you have to put together to be able to do this, right? It's postmodernism and collectivism in this sort of weird amalgam, right? So I can use postmodernism to interpret anything any way I want to. And then Lindsay Ellis is just part of this miasma collective of bi-curious white women, or whatever her sexuality is. I honestly have no idea, but I think she mentioned that once. In any event, and so all of the people who are associated with Lindsay get tarred with Lindsay's crime. Right?
There's an extension factor that's a mess as well, which is this is again an extension of the idea Todd's mentioned about the mob mentality, is that once someone has been vilified, that it is appropriate from a mob's perspective, from a group perspective, that anyone associated with them in any form should be equally vilified and thus action taken against them. And I've seen that in effect, where, and this pervasive beyond the mob of like famous people and famous things getting attacked to individuals, because this is where I think the real nefarious point of all this comes down to, is how it turns into the interactions of smaller groups in everyday life that can affect you, me, and everyone else, not just people that have visibility. In that it's the classic like school fiefdom thing of people saying, well, so-and-so is smelly and they hang out with so-and-so, so how dare they still hang out with that, because then they're all smelly.
No,
it's
very middle school. It's very middle school clique.
The actions of, I think, a lot of the groups and how they go about this attack scheme and a need to get everybody on their side to attack with, and if others don't come to the same conclusion as them, they are wrong, is very grade school in the worst kinds of ways. And I've seen it discussed around my cosplay communities and stuff like that, where, and it's not just stuff that's affected like me directly or stuff, but just I see it constantly of people getting so tired of the childish behavior where somebody will try to take any one offense they can find and turn it into what needs to be for them the narrative of an entire person's life, and such that they need to catch and carry anybody they can, not just their specific groups of friends, but everyone and anybody they can, to drive that narrative so that it must be the reality for all things.
I'm really glad you brought. I'm really glad you brought that up because I'd forgotten about this until you mentioned the cosplay community. There was a controversy like this inside the knitting community.
So that's the crazy thing, right? This is everywhere. But yeah, what was in the
Right?
knitting community?
So there was I think it was a dude. So there was a dude who got on the wrong side of the trans activists in the knitting community. And suddenly I don't even remember what it was over. I just remember that I saw it and mentioned it to the Mistress of Giggles, going, not even knitting is safe from this. Right?
Well, it
And
makes sense. And you say it's trans activist stuff, so that's a bit more controversial than just plain old knitting.
well, no, but still, I mean, and again, I don't remember the context, so maybe it was the worst thing in the world, and I'm underselling what it was, but I just remember seeing it, and it's like, wow, you can't even find refuge in the knitting community to sort of have tell a joke or say something the least bit off color.
Oh, you should be. I don't think that's appropriate in any circle, though.
It's but when did we stop? When did we stop being friends? And I don't mean you and me. I don't mean you and me personally, but I mean
sure,
if we're in a small like a small gaming community, right? And well, okay. So I was about to give an example, but now that I think about it, if somebody was new to our gaming community, I wouldn't have made the joke. I wouldn't have made the joke that I did. But we were playing a D&D campaign, and one of the guys was playing like a bow ranger, and had it out for kobolds. He would go out of his way to kill kobolds.
Okay.
So we have this encounter where there's a kobold coven or a kobold cave, right? And there are these two giant robotic worm things that are moving around, but there's this kobold cave, and the ranger focused on the kobolds. And so we started making kobold genocide jokes because every time we ran across kobolds, this hunter would try and kill them. Right? And
Okay.
it became this whole running gag, right? And he would start firing at kobolds, right? And they're a great enemy because you can throw them at a party by the thousands and they're just there to get killed.
They're fodder,
Right?
yeah.
That's the whole point of those things, right? And so we had this sort of running joke where at some point, like I would say a couple of things in a thick German accent because this guy's slaughtering kobolds, like committing kobold genocide. And it was this sort of funny thing in the context of he's killing dozens and dozens and dozens of kobolds with AoE, and it's just like, are you kidding? Right? It's like, but to be fair, right, I would not make that kind of joke if we had just brought somebody new in.
Okay,
Like,
so
I
there's
was
a
comfortable with everybody in the room, and so I could make that joke. So
yeah, there's a couple of contextual differences there between I think what makes a joke okay and what makes it not okay. So first of all, genocide in general is a topic that even using the word in a jokey context is going to be in poor taste regardless. And I don't think that means it's off limits or terrible or you're an awful person for doing it. I just think it just means that it is kind of an off taste joke, and some people won't find that okay, and that's okay as well. If you're amongst people who find that okay and you use that joke and you're not saying like making a Jewish joke or something, which would obviously be terribly and horrifically wrong.
yes, yeah,
That's different entirely. The fact that it's to do with kobolds, in my books, I would say that makes it kind of okay because it's not actually referring to the genocide. It's a genocide. That's a bit different.
right.
So it's kind of in the same way referring to killing or murder. It's not referring to a killing or a murder. It's the general idea.
It's the concept. Yeah.
And while it's racially motivated, evidently, it's racially in a fantasy setting. And I'm sorry, but part of D&D is role playing, and if you're role playing as a racist character, that's okay in my books, and because as long as you're not actually being racist to people in the real world, and you're not being racist to real people, then who cares? It's part of the story, and I think having in the humanities, it's super important to emulate the real world. so that we can learn from that emulation. There's a reason there's so many films and so much music about horrible topics such as racism and such as sexism and other prejudice and things like genocide, because it's important to discover and explore these concepts. So,
but no, so your
in
point is well
particular,
made,
I'd say it's
Ken.
okay in my books. I just, like I said, kind of slightly poor taste to have any genocide joke, but that's part of the. If that's what you're going for, I guess that's what you're going for, right?
Yeah, but I sort of changed. I changed direction, sort of in mid thought there, because it really is important about friends and knowing people. Like, would I go into a random Discord and make that joke? No, absolutely not. You don't know who's there, right? But at the same time, like we've stopped. It's not necessarily that we're not friends. It's that we've stopped giving people the benefit of the doubt. Right?
I could see. Well, no, I could see in some cases, Todd, that happening. I think there's a challenge because I think one of the things that is happening across society and is that people that perhaps never have been aware in the past of the problems that can be associated with certain terms, certain ways of thinking, certain speech, things like that. As they're becoming aware of it for the first time, they themselves are struggling with what it means to them. And so sometimes what might have been innocuous to them in a friendly group setting, they're realizing some of the things they're observing are based upon some pretty bad things of the past and things that the challenge being, right, they some people, ones I've specifically run into in some very specific issues, have talked about learning some of the problematic things in the past in the U.S. of race and other stuff like that, and thus things that seemed totally appropriate or fine or just funny in earlier times are less so. And they even come to a point where they're trying to say, well, as I'm trying to understand this better now that I'm finally aware of it, how do I fix this, right? What do I do that's not just, rah, this is a horrible thing? And I have actually seen in quite a few cases where humor amongst solid groups or little groups is where a lot of that comes out in what seems to be friendly, not a big deal things. But I have witnessed in chat rooms at work that are amongst friends some truly horrific things being shared that it blows my mind that people still find it funny. And I'm pretty old school when it comes down to, like, I'll laugh at some pretty off-color jokes. But I see some things that it's used in a way, humor can be used in a way to perpetuate those old norms in a bad way. Because as long as you get people to laugh with you, it solidifies to you that it's okay to voice those things. And in some cases, it's just slightly off color and it's still funny and it's fine. In other cases, you're actually showcasing this is a safe environment for people to be racist assholes.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And I've seen it perpetuate in ways that...
It's a good point.
I look at the main group and I'm like, are you guys freaking kidding? And I've tried on little cases my own self to be like, yeah, I understand the joke, but we should probably not use that word specifically. Like, I think you can still tell the joke without that word. Or I think you can still do what you're trying to do without this. And unfortunately, I've often run into situations where the people who are in there don't want to be challenged, right? They don't want to learn. They don't want. They just want to be accepted. And they think they've got an echo chamber. And so when I bring it up, they suddenly get real quiet. And I'm like, oh, okay. So you don't actually want to be a better person. You do actually believe this way and are just mad I was here to call you out on it.
Huh. Yeah, that's
Can I just say the way you respond to that, by the way, is so much better than what we're talking about the topic of the show with the idea of the mob, right? Yep. I love the fact that you said, hey, here's some friendly FYI. That could be offensive for these reasons. I don't hate you as a person. I don't think you're an evil person. I don't think, that you are inherently definitely a racist and can now be labeled as such, or a sexist, or whatever.
Right.
I think I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt in the sense that not that it's okay to make the joke, but that I don't think that necessarily reflects who you are. Perhaps you're just you're having a bad day, or you weren't aware of certain concepts being so offensive. And if you're open to the education I'm willing to provide to you, and you're willing to go and research it yourself and work out why, maybe have a discussion about it, then
Yeah.
that respect is still there, and
Well-
that's how these things should be done, in my opinion.
One of the challenges,
Right?
though, is like you said, you showcase it. I can do that sometimes in a very small contained group. You can't do
Yeah.
that to the mob. And I say that to bring it back to the mob mentality, one of the challenges of the idea of the mob or groupthink or such, where people are all kind of just glamping on to the same idea, is that I have tried on social media to provide levity to discussions that are just completely diverse and out there, where it is basically two mobs butting heads. And it is so often just, it is basically shouting into the maelstrom and can't be heard, or people choose not to. They just ignore it completely because it deflates both arguments. And when I call for people to actually think a little bit and not just treat each other civilly, but actually have a conversation to see, because I tend to believe if most people actually talked about what their motivations are, they find out they're all very similar, regardless of the outcome or the direction they think they need to do to get there. And so it sucks trying to, when you see something that people are reacting heavily to and try to dial it back, it's really tough to deal with. And I don't always do well about it by the means. I mean, a year ago with a lot of racial things, I was very angry all the time because of the litany of things that were happening at once. And it was difficult for me to not get just mad and join the maelstrom, join the mob, right? It was hard. I had to get called out to pull back from it.
That was why I left Twitter. 100% the reason why I left Twitter. Like, the Mistress Wiggles and I had this conversation. It's like, why are you even on there? You're mad all the time. And the best defense that I could come up with was Sun Tzu, right? Know thy enemy, right? And these
I can understand that.
I don't like to think of anybody as my enemy, but these people are my enemy.
I have a lot of people.
They certainly consider me theirs.
That's a kind of a key, right? Because I have a lot of people on social media where I've seen comments made that I'm like, wow, I know you perpetuate that or say that we are friends, but the things you're pressing as viewpoints and sharing challenge me to make me feel safe in your presence, that I could actually go out with you and have a beer and not have to consider everything about our situation.
Would you say that thing to me face to face?
Right. I have family members who have supported things and stuff that I'm like, man, next family reunion might be odd, right? Because y'all believe and share some stuff that is so problematic that it's challenging to me. You don't see what you're perpetuating. And so it happens. Yep. But to get back, and I'll preface this before we take a break here. Because we'll come back from the break. We have some emails from Ionis we got to catch up with because he has put his epic effort into work and we can't let that go sideline. But
fantastic.
When we do come back, to get back to kind of the mob mentality, I've actually had this conversation over the last week when I was out in California with my sister-in-law to some degree that actually ties back to, Todd, some of the stuff you said at the beginning of the show that gets back to political interactions and such. And one of the challenges in the United States about the political climate today, when we talk about the mob or when we talk about what I'll label in some ways as groupthink, and how I talked about in the other issue too of the idea of the one video on YouTube of when the woke eat each other, essentially, when things can cross lines and become a internal conflict at that point. So I want to get to some of that after the break, but we're going to take one. And in this case, we'll have a few minutes here, unless I decide we've made it enough and get back, but I need to refresh stuff and allow the Ionises of the world to empty their bladders. But we're going to play a song from OC Remix here, only because it's nice to have something with it in the name. This is from, was it Nutritious? The OC Remix song from Ultra Street Fighter 4 called Dash Cancel. So we'll be back right after this and continue the conversation, everybody. You're watching ShowX here on Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, all the places, and we'll be back right after this.
You're listening to ShowX on btwproductions.com.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. It is time for us to do some cleanup in the form of emails. So, we have 2 from Ionis because we've had 2 shows before since we've read one of his emails. So, the first one should be relatively okay and quick because this was in response to us talking about the games we were waiting for. Of course, this thing says, games I'm waiting for, explicit. So, let's see what my editing skills go with. It says, hey guys, from Ionis, do you know what games I'm looking forward to in 2021 and beyond? None. I am absolutely done with this crud. I'm not looking forward to new releases. I dread them. It's like looking at an approaching premiere and wondering, well, let's see what's going to be wrong with this one. Don't get me wrong. I don't wish for games to be bad so that I can bitch about them on the internet. No. I genuinely expect every single game to suck major bags of phalluses. And if, by an act of gaming gods, a new game turns out to be fine, I'll be happy. But before release, F no. Microtransactions. Bad plot, bad port, bad gameplay. Bad use of license, last-minute Epic Store exclusives, aggressive DLCs, too short campaigns, pointless live service. The list goes on. Here, I made a bingo chart for you. Oh, gosh. I see. Can I share this real quick? Yeah. Doink. Share this one so that people can see his bingo chart here. That is bingo being a single-player campaign is 4 hours long, too many DLCs, sequel misses features from original game, microtransactions interfere with the pacing of the game, bad port, etc., etc. Oh, no, that's bad. All right. Thank you, Ionis. Continuing. I'm sick and tired of having games I look forward to being bricked, and yet making profit and being defended by some dub MFers who happen to have their heads so far up their A's that they can't recognize a Wii controller from a fake phallus. And before anyone says, okay, Ionis, just take it easy, you're overreacting. Yes, I effing am. I wish more people would overreact. Trust me, I'd rather be chill. Look at games and I think, oh champ, this shapes up to be a swell title we're going to have here in a few months. 3 cheers to Activision for making it another wonderful smash hit. But this is no longer the case, is it? We collectively become hyped for something and then collectively throw it off the Tarpeian rock. That is how the development cycle goes now. There is reason so many games we look forward to are remakes, remasters, and re-releases. Because this isn't the best time to be a gamer, it's the best time to be a consumer of games. And those are 2 very different things. You want to know what game I'm really looking forward to? One I've never heard about that my friends will recommend me? Ionis. This game looks like something you'd like. Give it a try. This from Moozle, level 34 Tauren Druid, Nethergard Keep EU. P.S. This email might have been written under the influence of bad mobile port of Rome Total War. How can you do a bad mobile port of a game that originally released on PC, you ask? I don't effing know.
All right, Ionis, here's the thing. Flavor Flav told you what to do with the hype 35 years ago. 25 years ago. 35 years ago.
Don't
leave the hype.
Exactly. No, so I appreciate that.
I stopped. Like all of these industries that get together a couple of times a year to jerk themselves off. Like I stopped watching all of it because I'm not gonna get hyped up for a game. Like I was in a Twitch stream of somebody playing World of Warcraft Classic, right? And they started crapping on Cyberpunk 2077. And I was just like, you know what? Cyberpunk 2077 was fine, console problems aside. Like, I didn't experience any of the... I couldn't even play it at launch, right? I had to hex edit the executable.
Yeah, that's right.
In order to be able to play it. And I played it fine on a processor that it wasn't designed to run on. And it was fine. And I put that in the chat, and I induced like this 10-minute tirade of this guy who plays video games as a full-time job of Do you remember when we ran into this bug? And do you remember when we ran into this bug? And do you remember when we ran into this problem? And do you remember yeah, but I wasn't chasing any exploits either, right? I was just playing the game the way it very clearly was intended to be played. So I didn't go look for, I have to make a YouTube video about Cyberpunk 2077, so let me go find the highest mob density in the game so I can brainlessly farm mobs for 5 hours to try and find all really good drop weapons.
That is so boring, man.
I just played the game.
No, I feel very similar, Todd. Very similar. Because I enjoyed Cyberpunk, and I've had the same thing happen. I've done it on PCMR, chat rooms, and stuff like that, and then posts on social media where I've looked and said, I don't know what game y'all playing, but I like Cyberpunk. And
I did two full playthroughs. I ran 3 of the endings. Like, the only thing I haven't done is the Aldecaldo... sort of the Aldecaldo, the Nomad playthrough. I'm gonna get to it at some point. But
but in that same vein, yes, I agree. Because and that's why, like you said up front to what Ionis's email was, hype is one of the big killers of games. Because when you get and this is true of any experience, you get your expectations too high, nothing's gonna live up to it. And so that is part of the challenge. I agree, Ionis, that a game recommended to me by others is likely going to exceed and go beyond some things. I still get hyped for games, but it's my own personal thing. And it's based on what I've actually seen, not just an expectation of what could be. I try to balance that. And that's why we talked about our list of the games that we are looking forward to. But I can respect Ionis that there can be this view that a lot of games coming out are nothing special, nothing new, those kind of feelings, and thus why it might minimize your desire or such.
Stop with the review brigading.
What does that mean? What if it define review brigading?
So a review brigade is usually when the dev house gets on the wrong side of its player community, and this just happened with the Leviathan DLC for EU4. Right?
Oh, I've heard a lot of bad things about that, by the way.
It has problems. Don't get me wrong. It has problems. Does it deserve to be the lowest rated product on Steam? No.
Well, and I think that's another example, like we're saying, that we talked about in the forum of doing review bombing, and in general, it almost sounds like our exact subject today of people getting... when the response seems hyper compared to the actual offense, right?
Disproportionate.
Yes. That is the better way of saying it.
On some level, I get it, right? There's only so much money of disposable income that any human being has at any given moment, and you've made the choice to spend some of that disposable income on this product, and you have an expectation that the product is going to work. And then when it doesn't, your expectations are not met, and you can be frustrated or angry or whatever about that. But again, this game that you have enjoyed and played now for 7 years, right? That keeps getting features and things layered on top of it so they don't make you buy EU5, right? Which is what Firaxis would do, right? They drop a couple of big-time DLCs and make you pay for extra civilizations, and then right about the time you get the civilization you want, they announce the next Civ, right? So Civ 7 right around the corner. That's not real, by the way. I don't know that that's the thing, but I'm just guessing, but it's probably true. And the fact that there are people that have 30,000 hours of EU4 played.
That's crazy.
Think about that.
Well, but again, the whole thing here is it's that disproportionate reaction, right? And I think we'll get into more of this when we come back, if we get in the conversation I hope to have here after Ionis's next email, although as he preludes in our chat saying, if this one's controversial, can't wait for the next. But I think in general, the whole idea is people, I guess, consequence to action, not don't try to acquire bigger consequences than whatever the offense deserves. That would be my big lesson out there as a whole to any of these situations. Not that anyone's going to listen to me and me try to always bring it back to some level of like evenness or, I don't know, middle line sense. But we'll see. So Ionis' next email, which is cleanup, positive about Star Wars.
Oh my.
Says, so another Star Wars episode, huh? I should have seen this coming. I don't even like swearing anymore. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. So, where to begin?
You sound
It's
like
easy.
my mom, Ionis.
It's easy to dump a trunk of bantha poodoo on the sequel trilogy, but you know what? I want to be the devil's advocate for a moment and tell you 5 things I liked about the sequel trilogy. You ready? Here we go. 1. Casting. No, wait. Don't roll your eyes yet. When you look at The Force Awakens, those actors and characters had some solid chemistry on screen. Even Daisy Ridley, who, by the way, is absolutely adorable, and as a student of the human body, I find her facial structure positively exhilarating. Jokes aside, it is great to see some completely unknown actor get a big break like this, and she was always the most natural and approachable of the cast behind the scenes. I remember some interview with her when she said she is growing resentful of people always making selfies with her instead of taking those few moments and talking to her as a person. John Boyega. While I didn't like he was from the start a bit of a comic relief character, he brought in the energy and humanity to the role of an effing stormtrooper. You know, one of those guys that gets mowed down by everyone? He is one of them. Love the concept. Adam Driver. Gosh, what a great choice for Kylo Ren. The moment he removes his helmet and we see his face for the first time, we know exactly who he is. He's a wannabe beta male who must hide behind the mask because no one would take him seriously otherwise. He looks exactly the part. 2, speaking of Adam Driver and Kylo Ren, after watching The Force Awakens, I loved the fact that he was beaten by Rey. Yeah, Mary Sue, sure. But in my mind's eye, this fits perfectly with his wannabe character. He is not strong. He is not the next Vader. He's just a guy who pretends to be more than he is, quote, or friends, and Snoke is using him by feeding his delusions. And now, that he was exposed as the weakling he really is, it is time for his transformation into an actual badass. I imagine how hatred towards Rey would fuel his rise in the dark side, because, come on, what really made Ben Solo turn evil? He had a comfortable life as the son of a New Republic's heroes. He was trained in the Jedi arts by his uncle. He was the best Jedi of the new generation due to his connection to the Skywalker bloodline. Where could he find the hate to make him truly strong with the dark side? At least getting his anal cavity destroyed by Rey finally gives him something to build upon. Come on, Ryan. This is spelled out for you slow clap. Stay positive, Iona. Stay positive. 3. Since I said so many nice things about The Force Awakens, now something nice about The Last Jedi. I liked it when it was over. 4. Okay, laugh it up, fuzzballs. There was one concept I'd liked in Rian Johnson's film. I liked the fact that Luke connected the dots and said on screen what we all knew since prequels. Jedi Order effed up. To quote Darth Malgus, Jedi, quote, rested in the cradle of power, in their cradle of power, unquote.
Yep.
Unaware, oblivious, and prideful of their venerated position in the Republic, whose idea was it to give those guys command over the clone armies? How did that decision process come to be without someone saying, hey, wait a minute, are Jedi qualified to lead combined forces in a galactic-wide conflict? It is implied that having Jedi lead the army was Palpatine's way to distract and corrupt the Order, but the oh-so-wise Jedi Masters should not be so easily fooled. So yeah, while I'm not the fan of what Luke did with the knowledge, I like the fact he acknowledged it. 5. Carrie Fisher. It was something great to see Miss Fisher back on screen as Princess Leia Organa. For us, she remains royalty. All right. When someone asks you, this is now after, what makes you so special? Your answer, I was chosen by the big metal hand in the sky. But seriously, F xenophobia. I hate xenophobes, as much as I hate pugging. Last but not least, Darth Kotick. The goodwill of the consumers is a lie. There is only short-term profit. Through short-term profit, I gain money. Through money, I gain stock options. Through stock options, I gain more money. Through more money, the journalism is broken. The shills shall make me rich. Regards and many kisses from Moozle level 41 druid. Netherguard keep ye you. Bye.
That's
Well,
only
that was
seven.
quite
That's
a
only
long
7
text.
levels in a week, Ionis, you slacker.
I was going to note that it did show his level between the two emails. But thank you for
Hey,
that,
was
Ionis.
impressive. I'm actually very impressed by your ability to find so many good things about Star Wars. Well done. And it was actually kind of wholesome and heartwarming to hear the things that you said, Ionis. And it was very unlike an Ionis tale in that
You
sense.
forgot. You forgot your mother jokes. You forgot Vice Admiral diversity quota, and you forgot that we don't win by fighting what we hate. We win by fighting for what we love, or something.
It's the power of love, man. So, thank you, Ionis.
You know what? Can you laugh? I didn't write it.
Ionis, thank you for your hot take. As always, we appreciate you sharing.
Ionis is burying me in the chat.
It is wonderful. We appreciate it.
Hilarious.
And I
Good
actually
stuff.
agree with some of the points you put out there and the direction you did. I can continue to provide my... I don't know. We've had the conversation. We won't rehash it today. I'm sure we will have reasons to come back to Star Wars in the future.
51 weeks till we do it again. Hey,
So-
speaking of, Cara Dune's not going to be in the next season of The Mandalorian because she got on the wrong side of the mob.
Well, actually, I heard there's still discussions about that. About whether she comes back or not. There's discussions apparently. But we will see.
That's fair, but like, you know, she wasn't canceled. Her contract was just not renewed. But why would you not renew a central character of a really successful television series?
There are lots of
Like-
reasons.
I mean, unless you wanted some like ridiculous sum of money, right?
That's
Like,
to be fair, that happens.
You could price yourself out. And you're right.
Look
Ken,
at-
to be fair,
look
that
at-
does happen.
Look at Iron Man 2. And Don Cheadle's character going forward.
That's Forrest Whitaker, right?
No, it wasn't Forrest Whitaker. It was Crud. I forget his name, but yeah, who basically priced himself out of the rest of the MCU because he came in saying, "I am the biggest thing in this movie and need to be paid the most," and got himself removed or not renewed, not picked up for the same role.
You're right. It's not Forrest Whitaker.
Terrence
it's
Howard. Yeah, Terrence Howard, who basically said, "I want all the money more than anyone else," and they were like, "Or."
We'll get somebody better.
Right. Someone who has the vision to see how many of these you can make and get paid for.
When you're getting paid so much money, like, I don't get that greed, man. I mean, I really don't. It's just like, you should be fired for that sort of stuff, and you should be publicly mocked.
It is part of the negotiating factor, right? Because there is a lot of money that flows around entertainment, and there's nothing to be said about who deserves more or less than any. And so it is always a negotiation. Like in life, and even the jobs you take in your own positions, there's always a negotiation to be had to try to benefit yourself as much as possible. And how that turns out, if it hurts someone else more than someone less, that's not necessarily your fault, but
let's be charitable. What if Terrence Howard didn't think the MCU is going to get totally completed, right? He's a central Rhodey's a central character in a handful of these movies. So what if he was trying to what if just for argument's sake, what if he was trying to front load stuff? Right? If I get my big payday up front and the movies don't pan out, then I make out, right?
Yeah.
But you know, if they do work out, then, you know, I'm not going to get much of a raise between appearance 3 and appearance 6 because I asked for it all on the front end, right?
yeah.
Sure, that's kind of reasonable, but at the same time, clearly it didn't work out.
No,
Well,
obviously not, because
he
again,
rolled the dice.
They found someone better.
Yeah, he rolled the dice. He crapped out early, and someone else stepped in. I mean, he tried to negotiate. He failed the negotiation. So
Stop trolling.
it
Stop
happens.
Trolling, Stop trolling. Maybe he was a DC guy. Yeah, he's gonna be the new Green Lantern.
Terrence Howard just wasn't up
How
for the
can you beat
superhero
that
role.
perfection of the first film. You can't beat that.
You're right. It's kind of like the underrating of the original Deadpool in the Wolverine movie. It's just like can't truly appreciate. Yeah, the new ones are just hacks compared to the first. But
how many times do you get to work with your wife at your job?
you know, when many people, that is what you're after.
Yeah, true.
All right, so back to the topic at hand, and this is the perspective I wanted to bring into it. As we were talking initially about like the political side of things and how we get these groups who tend to believe that everyone should basically align. I've talked about this in various levels to put a name on a group that I've seen it because I've heard discussions where people have had challenges accepting where it is that I've seen a lot of, this is me speaking of observation, not me personally, but women being lumped into a category where they felt pressured to have the most progressive line of thinking as the LGBTQIA community, right? Because they needed to, being a woman, they should, in some way, feel like they support all of the objectives of even the most progressive ideas the group presented. And I've seen examples where women are like, well, I support this much, but there's issues there that I either don't understand or maybe disagree with. But were villainized because they were basically said, but as a woman, shouldn't you also, by default, agree with all these things? In a similar way,
agree with them is that you should be able to empathize with them because you are in a position that is generally speaking more. Go on.
This is beyond just the idea of saying, "Oh, it's something to be understood." It's like if you express anything that is not the political, like the far out view or the most progressive view, you are somehow instantly turned into an opposing
gender
force.
traitor.
You are now a villain. That is an example. Another one was like in the case here, and this is where it came up in the idea of the woke discussion.
I want to cut you off real quick, Wayne. 3 names that you can think about if you need examples for that: Abigail Schreier, Dr. Deborah So, and Barry Weiss.
Which I don't know off the top of my head, but we have there to look up. All right. But it goes beyond. That's just an example. But in general terms, and this is something that I wanted to bring it back to the political side because the conversation that I had over the last week in and out was a bit about in the U.S. right now, the way that politics are being done between what is considered the left and the right, primarily. We often see where it seems, at least an observation that was made, that the two sides are not playing the same game. They're not playing equally. And what I mean by this is that it sure seems like the right has a very consolidated message and thing they're trying to accomplish, where the left seems to be very broad and have a lot of scattered views. And the reason to scale that back a step further as to probably some of the cause of that is the idea that the left side in the U.S. is essentially the more encompassing, welcoming of all new, all progressive ideas, and thus has mass amounts of all these different groups that are kind of default umbrellaed within it. Meaning, if I traditionally lean on a progressive viewpoint, something left about an issue, maybe an issue like immigration law or something like that, but I am somewhat conservatively minded when it comes to financial issues or something like that, I can get villainized because, wait, every issue you should bring up should be left, right? Should always be left. And similar on a right kind of perspective or conservative perspective, it should always be conservative. And the challenge becomes on the left side is that there are so many new ideas versus the conservative side, which is like hold tight, keep things as they are, that the message can get very splintered and very broad, and it can be very challenging when you're like, well, there's this progressive idea about the border, about gender roles, about monetary situations, about health care, about
Yeah,
all of these things.
That's a really good point, Wayne.
That you get
because
this
generally speaking, leftist issues generally require education and consideration and thought. You're right.
Well,
That
but
makes
what
it
I'm
very
saying is,
difficult
what I'm saying, Ken, is the challenge is I, as an individual, may be very versed and very concerned about this one progressive idea, but may not feel as strongly about some of these others, or may not have taken the time to learn all the details about them. But because I may have a little more moderate view about others, because the progressive side is such loud and so often the ones trying to push so hard to make change, it's easy to be caught up in this mob kind of reactionary thing that, while I may generally lean left, if I am not 100% supportive of the most progressive outlying views, that I'm somehow now right. I'm somehow now an enemy. I am wrong in some way.
100%.
And that's the challenge that the progressive side has, is because it can be so splintered now. The conservatives have it easy because they're just like, don't change anything.
Right.
And so it's a really narrow viewpoint to hold that makes it so they can have one voice, one strength. And when you have the progressives trying to
100%.
placate everybody, they have no power. They have no focus. And it's a big struggle to try to pinpoint. And there's a real issue where, when we talked about why was Biden chosen being potentially the safe answer, because we've heard a lot of criticism that says, but this means we're not pushing all these progressive things that need to be done. It's like, perhaps, but then, there's a question I'll pose after this, but it's the idea that he represented what they thought would work in this time frame initially, versus the yes, can you go for everything, right? And part of that challenge is when you try to go from everything on a left perspective, it's too much. It is too much. There are too many issues everybody's trying to push. So when you say, let's go progressive, it's like, well, which issue are you pushing? And the problem is, it's rare that you can get a large group of progressive-minded people to agree that they're only going to focus on maybe immigration reform in such a way that they can actually get something passed, or on some kind of, discussion about a real-world take on gun ownership or something like that. Or there's too many issues, right? And so how do you do that, right? I don't believe there's enough energy to do all of the fights at once. And the problem with the progressive side of people is they don't choose to focus on one to get it done, to say, well, if we can focus on one and really get some kind of effort done with it, then we can go to the next one. And then we can go to the next one. Because when your goal is to try to change everything at once, I don't believe the political environment exists to change any of them.
So one of the things that came across my social media, well, what's left of it, my social media presence, was this whole idea of we got to elect somebody who's not Donald Trump first and then fix it.
And sadly, it's the truth. Yeah, and right? I agree with that generally.
Well, see, that's fine, but I think the baby got thrown out with the bathwater, because I don't think that Biden was the only choice.
Well, I absolutely agree.
I think you could have.
It's certainly optimal. I don't like Biden. In fact, I would say I very much dislike Biden for the reasons I said earlier in the show. I find him to be, like I said, a middle ground to keep everybody kind of happy. Like, even the conservatives are sort of begrudgingly saying, well, he's not the worst case scenario. At least it's not AOC or Bernie or similar, right? That's the way they see it generally. And that's why Biden was chosen. And I agree that he probably was the best for that situation, but definitely not the optimal. Definitely not optimal.
And so my my criticism of that mindset is, as a progressive, you have this policy platform, for argument's sake, that you've decided these are the things that we want. And in my opinion, you're giving up on them for a generation. Because in my opinion, the next two probably Democratic presidential candidates have already been decided.
Yeah.
right? And if you want to know who they are, it's Kamala Harris and Mayor Pete, right?
I can
Mayor
definitely
Pete's-
see where they've been given the platform and the focus to show that they are the most likely candidates if you're to choose today.
And if you want to be really really cynical about it, all of the op-eds for Kamala Harris's first presidential run have all already been written. They're all the Hillary Clinton op-eds, except you can replace sexist with sexist and racist.
Well,
Right.
so a question I would have, because this is actually the question I was going to
And Ken,
present.
you're looking at me strangely, so I'll be a little bit more specific. You have to vote for Kamala Harris, or you're a sexist and a racist, which is the big critique of anybody who would not or did not want to or would not vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016.
See, that's something I disagree with from the start, though, because I never liked Hillary Clinton either. For the same reason, I don't like Biden.
But that's so it's not because you have legitimate concerns about her policy positions or the way that she's handled herself in government or anything like that.
It's because I'm sexist, obviously.
Well, basically, Todd, what you're saying is this is the argument that will be often made as a way to minimize people actually doing in-depth analysis at some of the potential negative aspects of a candidate. Agreed.
Correct.
It's the deflection
Well,
point. It's what's used to deflect.
Mayor Pete, and it's the same thing with Mayor
Okay.
Pete. It'll be vote for Mayor Pete or you're anti-LGBT.
Well, it's what's done in every political circle right now, in every law that comes up, right? It's every law that gets pork attached to it that says, "Oh, you voted against the troops," because it's like,
Right.
no, I voted against this added subtext you put in there that was complete garbage. You just happen to have a title on it that said like the seriously, totally for real. I mean, it's all about the troops bill, 1999 redo.
Right.
That's not at all about
$200 million for some stupid infrastructure project.
I mean, it's classic.
Yeah.
Classic political theater, classic misdirection, but I agree it is something that will likely be a talking point people bring. Now, but my challenge and what I'll run to, even with what you've identified, Todd, as potential focus of future, Democratic nominees and such, is that the idea from where I was talking about, you have why did Biden get the choice this time, right, versus other potentially better candidates. And my question goes to is it better to focus on securing the good, easy win now to head off what might be a much worse future if we don't win, kind of thing, right? If the group doesn't win. Or is it more important to absolutely push for your ideal benefit, the thing that your outcome that you want the most, and never subside from saying, if we don't go strictly to this goal, we're failing ourselves. And thus it's like an all or nothing kind of play.
That's a question that none of us really know the answer to, and that's a big if, because there's so many variables of what could happen in the next few years. I mean, the pandemic alone, nobody expected that in the Trump presidency.
True.
And that changed
Well,
the playground
but regardless,
entirely, right?
but Ken, regardless of all of the variables, what's your strategy? What is the more important strategy? Is it to try to secure some win now to head off what you absolutely see happening, or is it to throw the Hail Mary and think that you're actually going to push the bar so much further? Do you go for the 3 yards every play, or do you go for the touchdown right now?
Right. Well,
what's going to win the game?
It depends on where you are. If you're part of the Beltway intelligentsia, Biden is your avatar, right? He is the avatar of the lobby, the giant corporate lobbyist.
Yes.
A military industrial complex intelligence community. Like there could
define
not.
intelligence, do you mean academia, or do you mean intelligence as in like FBI, CIA?
Like my job.
So when I said intelligentsia, I was thinking of think tank people.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry.
And not academics. Like,
Okay.
yeah, sorry. I was imprecise. So good that we clarified that. But he's the I've said this before. This government is the biggest collection of corporatists we have ever seen.
Correct.
Right? And so he's savvy enough to know when he's on the wrong side of an issue. which is something Donald Trump couldn't do. Right? And we saw it this week with the IP restrictions on COVID vaccine. Right? That the
That stuff gets me so mad.
That the humanitarian issues in India and South Africa have become so bad that a conversation was had probably between the administration and the pharmaceutical companies that says, you know what, you're gonna have to take a bit of a bath on this one.
Yeah.
Right? Like we have to look like the bad guys, or we lose the moral high ground in every discussion we ever have after this. So I'm sorry. Maybe you're gonna miss. You're not gonna miss your quarterly. You're not gonna miss your quarterly income projections. But you're gonna lose the license to print money for the next 6 months, right?
Can I refer back to one of the previous point that was made
Sure.
by Wayne, which is in order for the left to win, do they need to go for Biden or do they need to go for somebody more progressive? Right, that was kind of the question.
Well,
a quick win now or a bigger win
what is
later,
your strategy?
whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So just referring to that question in particular, I think that really depends on what your definition of winning is, because I think it depends on the person, what your political goals are and such. I mean, for me, while I would very much socially agree with somebody more like Bernie or AOC, and economically somebody much more left-wing than those, I think in terms of what's actually important, which we have really completely and utterly forgotten, which has been lost from the news, nobody's talking about it anymore, is the environment. And it's still the biggest problem we're facing on Earth, even throughout the entire pandemic. And it's something that people don't talk about anymore because the pandemic took the limelight. And that's probably the biggest damage that we've seen from the pandemic, is that we've lost a lot of the fight towards the I mean, admittedly, there's a lot of good stuff that happened during the pandemic, like people not driving as much, people not going into commuting or flying as much, yada, yada, yada. That's some side benefits. But in terms of legislation, in terms of lobbying, in terms of protests and people, even grassroots organizations, they've all just fallen over in favor of thinking about the pandemic and news sections of the pandemic and so on. And so if I had if I could press a button and say I was a dictator for one day and I could choose the next leadership, I'd base the government entirely on how they would deal with the environment, because regardless of what's happening currently with that small, and when I say small percentage here, I'm not trying to poo-poo the pandemic. I think it's a huge issue and we needed to take control of that, of course. But I mean, compared to the number of people, maximum number of potential deaths from the pandemic. Imagine we did nothing. Imagine we wore no masks, there was no vaccine, yada, yada, yada. Still nowhere near the eventual death count of what's going to happen with the environment. And that should be our long-term priority. So in terms of winning, that would have been my go-to.
Okay.
So I don't disagree with you, Ken, at all. At all.
Well, and so the challenge is, right, but even then, it still goes back to the question kind of, what's the long-term strategy? Because it feels like, for me, what the Democratic Party did, if it was done with foresight and an idea for the long term, is how do we take what they saw as a rapidly descending plane or something like that, right? Something on a vector towards a bad place, and turn it just enough to miss, right? to no longer hit the ground, to no longer hit the iceberg, right? Something like that. Such that now, we'll use the Titanic analogy, now that we've gotten just past the iceberg potentially, how do we now continue to steer it towards warmer waters, right? How do we now get somewhere safer? And that if they had tried to turn the rudder too hard, it wouldn't have done anything and we still would have hit the iceberg, right? And people wouldn't have accepted it at all. So maybe the long-term goal is, because what you did see is this is right now initial part of the presidency that we've seen currently is reversing a lot of things that were done solely out of, as much as the right liked to complain about it earlier, but just presidential, I forget the term, declaration or whatever, but without it actually being
executive
law.
order.
Executive order, thank you. Through executive order, right, has been a lot of reversing things that were argued as being very poorly done in executive order from the previous administration is one of the primary things, and focus there and then focus on pandemic and such. Because one of the things that was done for the environment was reducing or getting rid of some of the things that were done to give basically corporations carte blanche access to destroying whatever they wanted to, and pushing to get the U.S. back into the Paris Accords and stuff like that to start talking about environment again. It's not that we're suddenly going to make the earth green, but it's let's hardline, get it back kind of where we were going, so that now we can start having conversations of how do we actually do this in a responsible way versus let's just nuke it, do it all now, and whatever. And it's funny because what we've seen is encounter, because of the Biden approach, the right's criticisms of what he's been doing have been some of the most ridiculously conflated nonsense I've ever seen in politics. Where it's like
Biden has banned ammunition is one of the headlines I saw.
Biden is going to make it so you can't have more than 4 pounds of beef in a year, right? And all this garbage that is not exactly it is completely false. And what we've seen instead is they're reaching, right? Because this administration is so middle ground that, from the U.S. perspective, that it's like, wait, they're not actually trying to do all the things we hate, and they're not, they're trying to do things we don't like, but most people do like. So if we complain about too much, so it puts them in a weird position. So that eventually, I think more can be done.
Here's the fear, and then I want to move on to a couple of different things because we only have 8 minutes left.
All right,
sure.
It's not necessarily the Biden policy platform in and of itself, right? Like, fine. If I squint hard enough, I can see the argument that he was the most electable, of the 800,000 Democratic candidates. Right? It's not just that. It's that plus the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which is terrifying to me. Like if you put just those two things together, if you want progressive politics, and there's the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, why do the Democrats have to listen to you at all? They only have to win 11 counties to win the presidency. Right? Because the whole point of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is all these states are going to vote with whoever wins the popular vote, and you can win the popular vote by winning 11 counties in America. Right? And so basically what they can do now that the corporatists are running or are continuing to run things is basically tell the progressives to get stuffed. What are you going to do? Vote Republican? You're not going to do that. So you're going to vote for who we tell you to, or nothing, or we lose, right? So you put those two things together, and I don't see it as I don't see a route, right? So that's where my fear is, right? Giving up on $15 minimum wage for a generation, and giving up on Medicare for all for a generation, and giving up on real environmental reform or energy use reform in the United States. Not necessarily giving that up, but doing half measures for a generation, right? When there were people that I think had just as much chance, and maybe I'm wrong, it's possible, just as much chance to win as Biden did, or could be vice president right now, and could be setting the stage for them to run in 2028, I guess.
Well, one of the big challenges, right, with the Democratic Party, for as much as they are often the umbrella for progressive views, is they are one of the most risk-adverse groups I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And
You're
so,
absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And especially compared to the other
politics.
side who's willing to openly declare things that are abhorrent and roll the dice that they have enough of a fanatic base that's going to look past or accept the kind of things they perpetuate, that they're still going to get
take
votes.
our guns if we don't do this.
Well, they always have a good distraction.
No, the fear mongering works, right?
It absolutely does.
Why does the fear mongering work? Couple of things about that. The fear mongering works because it appears like there's an asymmetry in who gets banned and who doesn't. Whether or not it actually exists, I don't know. Right? Because and some of the things that I've been seeing, like on YouTube and stuff, the social media platforms have started putting the kibosh on some of the more extreme left-leaning channels, as well as the right-leaning channels. So I don't know that there's an asymmetry, but it sure looks like it, and you can use that, right, to stoke.
Well, it's a perception, right? Because what it is
Yep.
often I've seen, when it's been shared with me, more outrageous views presented by one side than the other, so they tend to get to a level that is bannable, silenceable, whatever, across the terms of service of various groups, right?
Yep.
Versus the other side. And so number-wise, I absolutely agree that one side got hit more than the other, but I think it's because they were echo chambering such outrageous things that they were all like standing up for it, like, hey, shoot me next because I'm also going to do the same abhorrent thing.
Yeah,
and so
sure.
I wasn't surprised.
And that very well may be. All I'm saying is, even I, who's a casual observer of this stuff, think there's an asymmetry, right? And though I'm not willing to say that means that there's an asymmetry, it just kind of looks like it. There's fear is also effective. Shoot, I had it and I lost it. Okay, I'm gonna move on.
Fear is also ineffective.
What's that? Yeah, but it's there was another thing.
Okay. Well, that's okay. You had a few more points to get in here before we're done today.
It's gone. Well, so one of the things that I want to talk about is the fact that now the mob is a problem, right? Back in 2012, when Dr. Matt Taylor was destroyed for wearing a T-shirt, or
Yes.
wearing a specific type of shirt. Max Temkin, Brad Wardell, David Jaffe, Brett Weinstein, right? It has taken us, and if you think of it, bringing him up specifically for this reason, because we were talking about the pandemic, it's taken 18 months for public opinion to start to swing back to the idea that this thing got out of the lab. And think about that. It's taken 18 months of, by the way, they were working on this exact pathogen at the lab in Wuhan. And so it's very likely, not saying that it was released on purpose, but saying that this is probably something that got out of the lab somehow. Right? That touched this whole thing off. And it's taken 18 months. And why is it taken 18 months? Because the first person that said it was the president of the United States, who lied about everything. Right? And so it got called he called it the Chinese virus, and the second person who said, this probably came from the Wuhan lab, was the head of Trump's CDC. Right? And so it was finally Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying who, finally got on Bill Maher to say, hey, by the way, of all the possible hypotheses of where this thing came from, the lab release hypothesis is the most likely. Right? If you don't know who Brett Weinstein and Heather Hying are, they were professors at Evergreen State University that got on the wrong side of the mob when they refused to participate in the day of absence. And you can look that up if you want the details about that. But he got on the wrong side of the mob, and they were out of there before you could shake a stick.
So I think what you're bringing up there about examples of when... Well, I mean, in general case, I think we agree that the mob reaction, the disproportionate reaction to any offense, is a problem and continues to be a problem, and it's getting worse, it seems. That, and I don't know what the answer is to combat it.
Well,
You know,
but the Lindsay Ellises of the world and the ContraPoints of the world think it's a problem now because they got on the wrong side of it.
because
like
it
in
affected them personally.
In 2012, 13, 14, 15, they were cheerleaders, right? Both of them have used the term diet Nazi to refer to the anonymous message board people who just like to laugh at stupid stuff on the internet, right? Some of those people are a-holes who like to harass people. Fair enough. But you know, it's ContraPoints went on Brianna Joy Gray's podcast and started talking about how we need an internet panel of restorative justice to determine if somebody's been through a cancellation event, have they reformed themselves sufficiently in order to be brought back into the internet fold. Okay.
That's fine for a specific like network. Like, say Twitter decided to do that. That's their damn choice because they're a company. But I don't think that's a very smart decision for all of the internet.
Well,
That's
it sounds like
right.
it sounds like somebody
terrible
claiming
idea.
that they should be a gatekeeper to all things, and thus proposing that they themselves become and their chosen group become the gatekeeper for all things.
Trusted safety councils can't be trusted and aren't safe. Number one. And both Twitch and Twitter have them.
What if they were democratically elected?
If you took the entire user base and did nominations and that whole thing?
Yep.
Maybe. Like, I'd buy that.
Maybe
that's not bad.
Safety council that has like 10 members, all have different roles and specific, positions, and then you vote for those 10 different positions.
You know what, Ken? You convinced me. I like it. Yeah, that would be okay. If it was elected by the users of the platform, I'm okay with that, I think.
Cool.
Number two, right? This is all about reforming your thought process. And originally, my comparison of this restorative justice tribunal was the Walk of Shame from Game of Thrones. It's even worse than that. It's Room 101 from 1984. Because if you don't buy the orthodoxy, you don't get restored from your canceling event, right? You have to demonstrate that you think properly. It's like, hold on a second. I don't need your tacit approval to believe what I believe about policy issues. If I could defend...
no, I think it's to whether you're allowed onto whatever, right? But if it's for the entire internet, that is 1984.
Okay.
I think there's a point there.
I went on Twitter and I said that Anita Sarkeesian sucks, right? Not necessarily at her, but I just said, I don't like her work. I don't like the way that she ran her nonprofit, and I think she sucks.
Okay.
Right? She's one of the people that equated words and violence. So I've now committed an act of violence against a member of a marginalized community. That's enough to get me purged off the internet. I'm not going to change my view. Right? I'm not going to reform my thinking. If anything, it's going to drive me away from Twitter and toward 4chan, right? So that I can say that Anita Sarkeesian sucks.
Well, yeah, if all you want to say is that somebody sucks, that is something that's perfectly reasonable, and you should have the legal right, and any sensible platform would let you have the right to say that, right? It's if you say women or men all suck. That's different, right?
Words are violence. AOC told me so.
Words can be violence. They absolutely can.
Well, so that's the problem. There are specific examples you could bring up where words are actually inciting, causing whatever violence, versus just expressing an opinion that will not cause additional effect upon something. And this is where I think that it's challenged, because I don't see personally a black and white or a specific line, and I think it is case by case, because you can come up with examples where absolutely somebody has done something beyond most people's sensible direction, but you can also come up with the ones where it's on those middle grounds, right? And the challenge is, I think Ken said it well when he said any what was it? Not respectable platform, but any
Sensible.
sensible platform. The challenge being defining sensibility.
Right.
And so I don't know what the one answer is, or if there is one answer. I currently actually support that at least most companies, I think, are trying to do something along a decent path. And I think it's because that while they're not outsourcing it to the community to define for them because they're trying to maintain control of their companies, because any capitalist should appreciate that, but that they're trying to do what's best for their company so that they make the most money they can. And if the best thing for their company is to negate certain things, they will do that because that's what their community basically is asking for.
And you know what?
So
This is the one time that I'm kind of okay with private, because as much as I like the public government institutions, and I'm generally for big government and everything, I think it's correct so long as social media has a variety of platforms available and you can choose from a variety of them. Some will lean certain ways and some will lean other ways. There's a reason Reddit is generally more left wing in American terms, but not anywhere else. Same with Twitter, as opposed to, for example, Parler, or the brand new 4 days ago announced Trump's new communications platform, as he puts it, which is apparently a WordPress blog, by the way.
Oh, fun.
So funny. Like, dude, you had so much money in backing. You could have really had a big, you could have made money there.
It was very Trump. Big name, no
100%.
no depth.
No. It's all mouth, no trousers.
Yes.
Yes. As I think the British
probably even more
the
accurate
British cliche goes. All mouth, no trousers. I wanna leave with one point. I know we're late, and then we'll get out of here. My worry is when you divide people like that, and people can plug their ears and just demonize the other side, if not drive them further underground, right? When the next, right? I think, one of the things that the next Trump is going to be way worse than this Trump, right? And in my opinion, if you start telling people that you can't talk about these things because we will come for you if you do, right? That, how many things can I not talk about before I go, well, I'm just done with this philosophy. Like, this philosophy is not in keeping with is not in keeping with what I believe in. Where do I go find something else?
Yep.
This is what, in my opinion, has led to the populist revolt in the United States and in North America and Europe that I keep talking about, right? If the powerful groups would have listened to the people that were talking to them, right? And forget about race and gender for a second. Just working people that haven't had a raise in 50 years, that struggle working multiple jobs to make rent, that have been driven away from lots of industrial towns towards the big technology centers, right, in our country. And if the people in power had listened to those people at least a little bit, I don't think you would have had the populist revolt at all. Not at all. I don't think the people that were driven to vote for the populists in Italy, or to vote Brexit, or that are looking at Marine Le Pen or voted for Donald Trump, I don't think they were asking for a ton. And I think they were. I think I saw somebody. This is not my thought. This is somebody else's thought, but I'm gonna retread it. They were so mad. They've been so mad for so long, and they keep being told that their biggest problem is that they're bigots.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It's a protest vote. Trump was a protest vote, and people realized that they could have their way and fell into the sort of echo chamber, which became kind of a cult. for many, the QAnon stuff, right?
Yeah.
I don't think most conservatives and most Republicans are QAnon crazy people. I think most people are just Republicans who kind of got taken away by the wave and got into the hype a lot.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean there's a bit of pragmatism in there, right? If you are looking at if you're looking at the landscape of national American politics and it doesn't look like you're ever going to win an election again and suddenly this an individual taps into something that you were incapable of tapping into, I'd ride that wave 100% if
I
I
get
was
it.
interested if I was interested in winning.
I get it. I'm not going to say I would ride the wave. I don't know. But I have been swept away under an ideology in the past because it seemed sensible, and I was fed so much filtered, cherry-picked news that seemed sensible, and it seemed like the opponents were a bunch of crazies. I followed that for a while until my eyes were opened to a bigger picture. So I get it. Anyway, I think that's a good point for us to leave. This has been a really interesting discussion that's been bouncing back and forth over a bunch of fascinating, but generally speaking, I think we've stuck to the same ideas throughout the show, even if it's not necessarily to the one specific topic we want to stick to. Same sort of philosophies, and it's been an interesting discussion. So I really appreciate you guys chiming in and telling everybody your thoughts.
Yeah, these are fun.
Yep. Well, maybe not the content everybody's always here because we like to get geek a lot, but at the same time, this is the real world. And so it's talked about also the things that affect us. You know, we didn't even get into like, you know, SNL and Dogecoin or anything this show, but
Yeah.
which is
so what did what Elon Musk in his monologue admitted he has Asperger's syndrome?
Yes.
Apparently.
Yes. As well as
It's not
various things
surprising.
came of it.
Yeah, the guy does a lot of like he shows a lack of understanding sometimes when it comes to social, mishaps and such on Twitter, etc., and does stuff that is often, inflammatory. When I don't think he does mean it that way, and it actually makes it a bit more endearing to me, and a bit I now that I understand where a lot of this came from, and he's not actually just intentionally trying to inflame people. I understand him a bit more. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, and I'll give him credit for, or SNL as a whole, for trying to use his idiosyncrasies and general things in the sketches they did. I think it was entertaining to a degree. All right, but we are going to get out of here, and thank you all for joining us in. I'm sure we'll get into other geek discussions going forward, and so let's see. Next week, I won't be here because I will be in North Carolina with a friend driving cars. Or on the way back from, I believe, unless somehow I have good internet. I will not be hosting next week.
Ken and I will do a Fluffy Bunnies episode next week.
And then I think the last week of the thing I will not be hosting as well, the transition of the end of the month. But regardless, there will be shows because we have it worked out so everyone can host as needed.
Yeah.
Feel free to contact us, email us your thoughts on everything we talk about. We'd love to hear from you, vtwshowx@gmail.com, because this is not just for us, it's for all of you. And so,
On a sort of meta... Oh, sorry, Todd.
No, I'm sorry to make us go even later, but Ionis has threatened to not write an email for next week, and I would feel bad. So, Ionis, your assignment is to tell us what happened when the winged hussars arrived.
I'll be curious to learn that.
I'm sorry to go meta here, but talking about the show itself. But we are episode 490. We are 10 episodes away from the big 500. Now, we've had a few ideas about things to do. We've been having a bit of chat back and forth between the three of us. But, this is a big occasion. This is it's a pretty big thing. There's not many podcasts out there that have, there's a bunch that have 500 episodes. That's not such a big deal. It's the 500 episodes over so many years is the big deal. This is an old podcast. We have roots, man. We have roots. We've grown over the years. We've changed. We've moved around different countries and continents. We've done things. Marriages have happened. Soon we'll have new babies coming along.
Yeah.
This show has been around for such a whole bunch of life events, and it's a very special thing of 500th. So anybody out there that has any thoughts on what we could do to make it special, please send in your emails. vtwshowx@gmail.com. Don't feel you need to do it right now. Have a think about it. Take a couple days. Maybe write a little note on your desk and be like ideas for ShowX 500th. Like, I don't think we're going to do one gimmick and that'll be it. I'd like if we could do a bunch of things that we could
Wait, are you
bring
trying to say
together
our
and make it
show's a
special.
gimmick?
We do get things occasionally. And I don't want the 500th episode to be like, oh, we're doing a raffle, and that's it. You know, I'd like it to be here's a bunch of ideas, then we could do a bunch of fun things to make it memorable and something special.
Yep. Hando, we are not doing a gender reveal party. We will do a gender reveal party when I hold the child up, like the beginning of The Lion King, and tell you what the gender of my child is going to be.
That's a little bit of foreshadowing for your own death, though, isn't it? Oh wait,
Yeah.
no, it's not, does he? I was thinking with the
No,
the-
that's what I was gonna
the-
say. It's the
It's
egg that lifts
Yeah,
us
Rafiki.
But that then implies it's not your kid.
He's just saying he's going to mirror it
Okay,
in that
was
sense.
a really bad. That was a really bad analogy. Now I have to go on Maury Povich, and there's going to be an envelope, and you are not.
Sorry
Very
to say. Anyhow, it is time for us to get out of here so we can give you all back the rest of your week. Ken, could you do us the honors?
Sure, it's super easy from this job for me nowadays, guys, because I consolidate all our links into one place. So whether you want to find our subreddit, if you want to find our other show, Where My Pro's At, whether you want to find our Facebook page, our Instagram, our Patreon, whatever you want to, our various Twitters and such, if you want to find any of that stuff, you can just go to linktr.ee/ShowX. You'll find everything there. It's super, super easy. Please do. We really appreciate all your support, and that includes like and subscribe and retweeting and all that stuff. Growth is hard, man. Growth is tough, and it really relies on you guys to help us out. So we really appreciate you doing the small effort, just hitting like, hitting subscribe, hitting retweet, whatever. It's a little thing that goes really far. And every time we do it, we do little things like message each other and be like, "Did you see we got a couple extra retweets this week?" And it makes us feel happy. So every little thing helps. And yeah, I did mention briefly, check out our other show, Where My Pro's At. So much effort goes into making that show prettier each week and have better content. And we're trying to grow there as well. We're actually, this week we made a TikTok. We've not actually published anything there yet. But, we're trying to be done with the kids. No, we're not really. We're just trying to...
Look forward for the future. Look forward for the future Where the Pro's At interpretive dances for various books.
Yeah, I'm going to wear very skimpy clothing and do the most popular modern dances there.
I've heard one of the most popular forms of stream on Twitch is the hot tub stream. So I'm expecting to see hot tub TikToks.
Oh my god, we're already on a cringy platform in that case. But yeah, we're gonna be doing these like 30-second reviews, and it's for like when one of us reads a book and the other person doesn't want to read it or whatever. We don't have to do a full review. We'll just do a quick 30-second taster. I just want to get the format right on the editing because I had a look at how other book reviews are done on TikTok, and it seems like they use the TikTok's inbuilt editing. Whereas I was planning on doing it all professional using editing software. But I'm worried that if I use the editing software, it might look like an advert and people will just skip by it, right? So I need to think carefully about it.
You have to look TikTok-y, man. You have to like...
I don't know what that means. You're scaring me.
I am interpreting because I have no idea.
That was a very 80s, 90s reference to... 20s. Oh god, I can't believe
This shows Todd. This shows
all I
Todd
got.
and I's ability to understand what's like happening here.
Yeah, I saw it immediately.
through
Like,
the lens.
and
of the 20s.
eventually a giant tyrannosaur is gonna drop on Wayne's house.
And
All right, we are
basically-
way over, guys.
Yeah.
It is
All right.
time
Thank
to
you
get
so
outta
much,
here.
everybody. Thank you for tuning in this extra long ShowX.
So with that, we're going to get out of here. You guys all have a wonderful week. Tell your mums you love them, and we will catch you again next time. So everybody, have a good one. We're out of here. I'm totally sitting here like, wait, which buttons do I hit? It's been a minute. It's been a week. Right. We're out of here. With that, salute. And we're out of here, everybody. Bye.
Goodbye. See you in the next zombie.